Everyone knows the story of Tutankhamun's tomb, the gold, the glory, the curse, but few know what really happened to the men who opened it, or the strange pattern that still can't be explained. By the end of this story, you'll understand why scientists still whisper about the pharaoh's revenge. They said the curse on the tomb was just a myth, a story told by the desert to frighten those who dared to disturb the dead. But myths have a way of remembering the truth. In 1922, two men walked into the Valley of the Kings and changed history forever. One sought glory, the other immortality. Both would find something far older and far darker. This is the story of the boy who became a god and the curse that followed those who woke him. Now listen to the story of Tutankhamun, the pharaoh who refused to be forgotten. Before we go on, please support this channel by hitting the subscribe button. Thank you. The desert keeps its secrets well. For more than 3,000 years, beneath the burning sands of Thebes, the tomb of Egypt's youngest ruler lay untouched, hidden beneath shifting dunes and broken stones. A chamber sealed with the breath of ancient gods. But in the modern world, the age of explorers had come, and Egypt, the land of the dead, had become the world's most coveted prize. Howard Carter was not a man of myth. He was an archaeologist, practical and stubborn, driven by obsession more than fame. For years, he searched the Valley of the Kings, convinced that one tomb remained, a royal resting place untouched by time. But sponsors grew impatient. The sands yielded nothing but broken pottery and empty promises. Until November 4th, 1922, a worker digging near the tomb of Ramses VI struck stone. Beneath layers of rubble lay a step, and then another, and another. Carter ordered the workers to stop. The air around the site grew still, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. He sent a telegram to his benefactor, Lord Carnarvon, waiting in England. It said only, "At last have made wonderful discovery in valley, a magnificent tomb with seals intact." 3 weeks later, Carnarvon arrived, pale from illness, but burning with excitement. Together, they descended the newly uncovered stairway, lanterns flickering against walls carved with ancient symbols. They reached a sealed doorway, plastered with hieroglyphs, the royal cartouche of a name long forgotten, Tutankhamun. No one spoke. Even the desert winds fell silent. Carter pressed his ear to the stone. Beyond it, there was nothing, only the sound of eternity. He made a small breach in the door. From the hole, a breath of air escaped, the first in over 3 millennia. The flame of his candle flickered, then steadied. Carnarvon whispered, "Can you see anything?" Carter leaned forward, and in the flickering light, gold shimmered from the shadows. "Yes," he breathed. "Wonderful things." They had done it. They had found the tomb of Tutankhamun, the boy king, the forgotten son of the sun god Ammonius. Inside lay a maze of rooms overflowing with treasure, statues of gods in pure gold, chariots trimmed with silver, jewelry fit for a god. And in the final chamber, a sarcophagus sealed beneath 3 coffins, each nested within the other like the layers of eternity. At its heart lay the face that would soon mesmerize the world, a mask of pure gold, eyes of obsidian and quartz, staring into forever. But even in triumph, something felt wrong. The air was thick, stale, heavy with the weight of centuries. The walls seemed to whisper, low, rhythmic murmurs that no one could quite explain. And then, Carter noticed the inscription carved near the entrance, faint but unmistakable. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." He laughed it off. Superstition, he told himself. But the workers refused to enter. They said the curse of the pharaohs was no myth. They said the dead remember. For months, Carter and Carnarvon cataloged every artifact with precision. The work of gods turned into inventory. The tomb became a world of its own. Candles flickering against painted walls, the scent of dust and decay mingling with incense and sweat. Every day, they moved deeper, unlocking the secrets of a boy who ruled 3,000 years ago. Every night, Carter would sit alone by the light of his lantern, staring into the gold mask. And sometimes, he could swear it stared back. Beyond the valley, the people of Egypt grew restless. Locals whispered that the English had stolen a god's soul, that Tutankhamun's wrath would strike down those who desecrated his rest. Even in Cairo, strange tales spread like desert wind. A cobra, sacred to Pharaoh, found coiled around the canary in Carter's home, killing it the very day the tomb was opened. It was dismissed as coincidence. But the whispers continued. And the gods, they were patient. Lord Carnarvon had returned to Cairo, tired and unwell. The air in Egypt had grown heavy, oppressive. He shaved, cutting a small wound on his face. Days later, the wound became infected. Fever followed, then convulsions. As he lay dying, the lights of Cairo flickered and went out. Every one of them, plunging the city into darkness. His dog, miles away in England, let out a single cry and fell dead. At that same hour, Carter's men kept watch at the tomb. They swore they heard something move inside. A soft, scraping sound, like sand shifting against stone. The first to die had been the one who opened the tomb. The curse had begun. Newspapers exploded with headlines. Death comes to those who disturb the pharaoh. Mysterious curse strikes discoverers of Tutankhamun. Reporters called it divine vengeance. Scientists called it infection. But in the streets of Cairo, no one doubted what it was. The gods had warned them. The boy king had awakened. Howard Carter stood alone in the valley, lantern in hand. The stars above him were cold, distant, the same constellations that once guided the priests of Thebes. He stared at the black mouth of the tomb. For the first time, he felt the weight of what he had done. He had given Tutankhamun back to the world, and in doing so, unleashed something the modern age could not understand. In the stillness of the desert, the wind whispered across the stones. To some, it sounded like sand. To others, like a voice. The boy king was at rest no longer, and those who had touched his tomb would soon follow him into it. And that was only the beginning. The tomb had been opened, the seal of eternity broken, and the desert was watching. In the weeks after Lord Carnarvon's death, fear spread through Cairo like a plague of whispers. Men who had once laughed at the idea of a curse now crossed themselves when they passed the Valley of the Kings. Superstition had become truth, one body at a time. Howard Carter tried to keep working. He was a man of logic, of science, or so he told himself. He called the curse nonsense, a fantasy for newspapers. But even he could not ignore what came next. First was Prince Ali Camel Fahmy, an Egyptian noble who had mocked the tomb's discovery as English folly. Weeks later, he was shot dead in London by his wife. Then came George J. Gould, an American millionaire who had visited the tomb shortly after its opening. Healthy one day, dead from fever the next. Soon after, another expedition member, Colonel Aubrey Herbert, Carnarvon's half-brother, fell blind, then died mysteriously. The list grew. Doctors, financiers, museum staff. A dozen names, all touched by the tomb, all dead within a year. And each obituary carried the same chilling refrain. The curse of the pharaoh claims another. Cairo became a city of shadows. The hotels emptied. Tourists left on the first ships home. Even the workers who had carried artifacts out of the tomb began to disappear into the desert, unwilling to face the wrath of the gods. In London, headlines screamed, "Death walks in Tutankhamun's tomb. Pharaoh's curse strikes again." And through it all, Carter remained, defiant, pale, sleepless. He spent nights alone in his tent, staring across the valley at the entrance to the tomb. The wind scraped through the rocks like distant voices. Sometimes he thought he heard chanting, sometimes laughter. But beneath the hysteria, the work continued. Artifact by artifact, Egypt's ancient secrets were carried from the tomb to Cairo, and from Cairo to museums half a world away. Golden statues of Anubis, guardian of the dead. Ceremonial chariots, perfectly preserved. And the mask, the face of Tutankhamun himself. It became the most famous image in the world. The boy king, eternal, serene. But to those who looked too long, his smile seemed to shift, not peace, but judgment. And still, the deaths continued. One archaeologist fell ill after handling the burial wrappings. Another died of pneumonia after opening a sealed coffin. Even those far removed from Egypt felt the reach of the curse. A museum technician in London collapsed after touching one of the statues. Coincidence, said the skeptics. But to the believers, the pattern was clear. The boy king was reclaiming what was his. The story of the curse became a global obsession. Newspapers printed tales of dark magic and ancient vengeance. Seances were held in London, New York, Paris, where mediums claimed to hear the voice of the pharaoh, whispering through the veil. "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs my rest." and people believed it, because the dead were listening. In England, Lord Carnarvon's daughter, Lady Evelyn, began to dream of the tomb. Each night she saw the same vision. Her father walking through a hall of golden light, then turning, his face hollow, whispering, "He is not at peace." She woke each time to the sound of wind scratching at her windows, though the night was still. Even Carter, unshaken for years, began to feel something changing. Tools misplaced, lights flickering in sealed chambers, a faint scent of incense in rooms long cleared of relics. And sometimes, he swore, the air around the sarcophagus grew warm, as though someone unseen was standing beside him. Scientists, eager to disprove the curse, searched for rational answers. Some claimed the tomb's air was filled with deadly bacteria, ancient spores sealed for millennia, waiting to infect whoever disturbed them. Others said coincidence, that a cluster of deaths around one event was bound to happen. But reason could not quiet fear. Because what science couldn't explain, belief would. And belief is far more dangerous. In 1925, 3 years after the tomb was opened, the sarcophagus itself was finally unsealed. Layer by layer, the coffins were lifted, gold, wood, stone, each engraved with prayers to ward off intruders. And there, within the final layer, lay the mummy of Tutankhamun. His arms crossed, his face calm, his body crowned in gold and lapis lazuli. For over 3,000 years, he had waited. Carter stared at the boy's face, at the ancient bandages that bound him to eternity. He whispered softly, "Rest now, Pharaoh." But the air grew colder. The flame of his lantern bent sideways, though no wind stirred. And somewhere beyond the walls, a faint tremor rolled through the earth, a whisper of movement, like footsteps beneath the stone. As the mummy was removed, another tragedy struck. An Egyptologist who assisted in the unwrapping collapsed soon after and died from blood poisoning. By the end of that year, another team member was found dead in his hotel room, cause unknown. The newspapers didn't hesitate. The curse lives on. And in their offices, editors smiled. Because nothing sold like fear. Years passed. The tomb was finally cleared. Tutankhamun's treasures were locked away in museums, admired, photographed, worshipped by millions. But even then, strange things lingered. Visitors fainted before the golden mask. Guards swore they heard footsteps echo through empty halls. And in the dead of night, the air near the display cases would grow unnaturally warm, as if the ancient sun of Thebes still burned inside. They called it superstition. They called it myth. But the myth endured. Howard Carter lived another 17 years. He never spoke of the curse again. When he died in 1939, his tombstone bore a single inscription, a verse taken from the walls of Tutankhamun's chamber. "May your spirit live. May you spend millions of years, you who love Thebes, sitting with your face to the north wind, your eyes beholding happiness." It was said that on the night of his burial, a sandstorm swept across Cairo, blotting out the stars. When it cleared, a single hawk circled over his grave, the ancient symbol of the pharaohs. Nearly a century later, scientists would dismiss the curse as myth, coincidence, infection, imagination. But still, no one can explain the timing, the patterns, the cold precision of fate. No one can silence the feeling that in disturbing the boy king's sleep, something older than time had awakened. And perhaps that was always the point, because the curse was never about death. It was about remembrance. A warning to all who forget that time does not erase the will of gods or kings. So now, when you stand before his mask in the Cairo Museum, look into those dark obsidian eyes. They are not the eyes of a dead child. They are the eyes of eternity. Watching, waiting. He ruled for a decade in life and forever in death. In the deserts of Egypt, gold fades. But the curse of a king never dies. I know you enjoyed this story. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel to support this channel. Also check out other interesting stories on this channel. Thank you.